Cleveland had over 40 quarterbacks. Maybe this time is different. That is what Cleveland is saying in 2026. That is what Cleveland has said before. Over 40. The number of different men who have stood behind center for the Cleveland Browns since 1999. Over 40 quarterbacks in 26 seasons. Few franchises in modern NFL history have cycled through quarterbacks this often. Several were first-round draft picks. 3 were Heisman Trophy winners. 1 was handed the largest fully guaranteed contract in NFL history at the time of signing. None of them solved it. This is not a story about bad luck. This is a story about what it means to stand at one position, in one city, carrying the weight of a fan base that has not won a championship in 62 years. This is a story about pressure. This is a story about what happens when an institution keeps asking the same question and keeps arriving at a different wrong answer. Crackers. At D, what was lost? To understand why the quarterback situation matters so much in Cleveland, you have to understand what Cleveland was before the struggle began. Because this city was not always defined by the search. It was once defined by something else entirely. One of the most dominant teams in the history of professional football. From 1946 through 1955, 10 consecutive seasons, the Cleveland Browns appeared in the championship game every single year. They won 7 of those 10. 8 championships overall. 4 in the All-America Football Conference. 4 more after joining the NFL. In their 4 years in the AFC alone, the Browns compiled 47 wins, 4 losses, and 3 ties. Not a dynasty, a machine. Otto Graham, Jim Brown, Lou Groza, Paul Brown. Otto Graham specifically, the quarterback who never missed a championship game in 10 years of professional football, who led the Browns to 5 consecutive titles before most franchises in this league had won one, who retired in 1955 having reached the championship game in every single season he played. Not most seasons, every season. 10 for 10. That is the foundation this city built its identity on. The standard it still measures everything against. And it is a standard so far above what the franchise has achieved since that the distance between them is itself part of the story. Then came 2017, December 1964, Municipal Stadium in Cleveland. The Baltimore Colts. Nothing. A 27-0 shutout. The last championship this franchise has won. The players who won that afternoon celebrated on a field in front of a city that had no idea it was witnessing something it would spend the next 6 decades trying to get back. It felt, in that moment, like the beginning of a new chapter. It was the last page. The years passed. The championships did not come back. The team appeared in 3 more NFL championship games through 1969 and lost all 3. The merger came. The AFC championship games came. The cardiac kids in the 70s. The teams of the 80s that kept getting close and never getting there. The drive, the fumble, the losses that became mythology. And slowly something worse than losing started to accumulate. Not failure. Pattern. The specific, documented, unmistakable pattern of a franchise that keeps approaching something important and keeps finding a way not to reach it. Then 68 November 1995, owner Art Modell announced he had signed a deal to move the Cleveland Browns to Baltimore for the 1996 season. The city fought it legally. Ohio filed suit. Fans protested. The anger was immediate and absolute, and completely understandable, because what was happening was not just the loss of a football team. It was the removal of something that had been part of the city's identity for 50 years. The NFL brokered a compromise. Modell could take the players, the coaches, the staff. He could take everything that makes a franchise function on a Tuesday in March. But the name stayed, the color stayed, the history stayed, the record stayed, which meant Cleveland kept the Browns the way you keep a photograph of something that is no longer there. 3 years without football, then 1999, the expansion era, the restart, beginning from nothing, with Tim Couch. At T2 over 40. The Carousel. Tim Couch arrived as the first overall pick in the 1999 draft. 21 years old. A Kentucky quarterback with a completion percentage so high, it had rewritten SLC record books. A player who, by every measurable college metric, was exactly what an expansion team needed. What he needed was an offensive line. He did not have one. In his rookie season alone, Couch was sacked 56 times. 56 times behind center for a team that had been assembled from the discarded parts of 30 other NFL rosters. He took 166 sacks across 62 career games. His shoulder eventually gave way. His career ended at 26. That is how the carousel started. Not with a bad quarterback, with a franchise that was not yet capable of protecting one. The names started coming after that, one after another, each one arriving with a reason to believe. each one departing with a folder full of losses and a fan base that had learned, slowly, not to fully trust the hope. Kelly Holcomb, Jeff Garcia, Trent Dilfer, Charlie Fry, Derek Anderson, Raby Quinn, Colt McCoy, Seneca Wallace, Brandon Whedon, Jason Campbell, Brian Hoyer, each one a reasonable person, making a reasonable decision, each one entering a situation that had not yet been fixed at a level that actually needed fixing. Then Johnny Manziel, the Heisman winner from Texas A&M, who arrived in Cleveland in 2014 as the most talked about quarterback prospect in years, charisma and arm talent, and the kind of energy that sells jerseys and fills stadiums. 2 seasons, 8 starts, gone. A cautionary story that the league still discusses when the subject of off-field risk comes up. Robert Griffin, 3. Cody Kessler, Deshaun Kaiser, 6 wins, 0 wins. A winless season that became part of NFL history. Then Baker Mayfield, the 2018 first overall pick, the Oklahoma Heisman winner who walked on at Texas Tech and transferred and rewrote every passing record in the Big 12, who came to Cleveland with the brash confidence of someone who had spent his entire college career proving doubters wrong, and who, to his considerable credit, did exactly what he said he would do. In 2020, Mayfield led the Cleveland Browns to the playoffs for the first time since 2002, and their first playoff victory since 1994. He threw 26 touchdowns. He protected the ball. He delivered a postseason win in Pittsburgh that this city had been waiting on for a generation. The city finally exhaled. It lasted 1 round. What followed was a sequence of events that still defines this franchise. The Browns decided that Baker Mayfield was not the answer, and they went to get Deshaun Watson. In March 2022, the Cleveland Browns traded 6 draft picks to the Houston Texans, 3 of them first-round selections, and immediately signed Watson to a 5-year, $230 million contract, every dollar fully guaranteed. At the time of signing, it was the largest fully guaranteed contract in NFL history. This is what certainty looks like at the organizational level. 6 first-round caliber picks and $250 million of guaranteed money. The kind of commitment that forecloses alternatives. The kind of swing that defines franchises for a decade in either direction. What Cleveland got was 11 games missed to suspension in year 1, career worst production in the games that followed, an Achilles tendon injury in 2024 that ended his season in Week 7, a salary cap situation so severe that the dead money from his contract will shape Cleveland's roster decisions well into the future, the decisions that accumulate, the draft capital spent, the certainty that said this time was different. It was not. Act T3. Right now, the 2025 season, Joe Flacco started the year. The veteran quarterback who had famously saved Cleveland's 2023 playoff run with one of the most unlikely late-season stretches in recent NFL history, brought back for another attempt. He went 1-3. He was traded to the Cincinnati Bengals by opt. Then they come the rookies. Dillon Gabriel, a 3rd-round pick out of Oregon, who had set college passing records, and arrived in Cleveland as a player who had spent years proving he belonged at levels where people kept saying he was too small and too slow and not quite enough. He started 6 consecutive games. He showed flashes. He took a hit against the Baltimore Ravens in Week 11 and was done for the season with a concussion. Then Shedeur Sanders, the son of Pro Football Hall of Famer Deion Sanders, a 5th-round pick in 2025 who began training camp 4th on the Cleveland depth chart, who watched Joe Flacco get traded, watched Dillon Gabriel get hurt, and found himself starting in Week 12 against the Las Vegas Raiders. He won that game, one of the few Browns quarterbacks in decades to win his first NFL start. He showed poise and pocket presence, and the specific quality of someone who had grown up in football and understood what the moment required. He also showed the limitations of a 5th-round rookie on a team that had spent 3 years trading away its draft capital. Cleveland finished the season searching. Again, the Browns entered 2026 searching for answers at quarterback, which is a sentence this city has heard for over 20 years. Pressure mounted around the coaching staff after another difficult season. New pieces arrived, new receivers, new attempts at building the infrastructure that has never quite come together in the post-1999 era. The genuine belief, held by people who build these rosters for a living, that the situation is improvable. It may be. That is the honest answer. The one that requires holding 2 things simultaneously. The weight of the history and the genuine possibility that history does not have to repeat. Act 4. The human cost. Every quarterback who arrived in Cleveland arrived as a person, not a symbol, not a solution, a person. Someone who worked since childhood to reach the highest level of the sport, who developed skills across 15 or 20 years of practice and competition, who came to Cleveland with genuine belief that they could be the one. and then entered a system that had not yet fixed what needed fixing. That had front office instability cycling beneath the coaching instability cycling beneath the quarterback instability. That had fans who wanted to believe and had been burned enough times that the wanting and burning had become the same emotion. Tim Couch is 48 years old. He did not fail Cleveland. He arrived as a 21-year-old first overall pick on an expansion roster assembled from other teams' discarded players, and took 56 sacks in his first professional season. His former offensive coordinator, Bruce Arians, has said on record that Couch was as talented as any quarterback he coached, including Peyton Manning and Carson Palmer, but that he was never given the circumstances to prove it. His career ended with injuries that were the direct result of those circumstances. That is the human cost of institutional failure. Baker Mayfield led this franchise to the playoffs and a playoff victory and was told, less than 2 years later, that he was not the answer. He met to the Carolina Panthers and then the Los Angeles Rams and then the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where he threw 4,000 yards and earned his first Pro Bowl selection and signed a $100 million extension. The quarterback Cleveland decided was not good enough became one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL the moment he left Cleveland. That is a sentence that requires sitting with. This is not a story about bad quarterbacks. The distinction matters more than it might seem, because if it was always the quarterback, the solution is simple. You just keep finding a better one. If it is the system, the infrastructure, the consistency, the organizational clarity about what you are building and why, then the solution is harder. It requires admitting that the problem was never the name on the jersey. Cleveland has had that conversation. The question is whether the lessons from it have been fully applied. XE5. Maybe this time Cleveland remains one of the few NFL franchises never to appear in a Super Bowl. The 1,964 championship sits in the record books. Otto Graham's 10 championship game appearances sit in the record books. The Municipal Stadium crowd that watched the Browns shut out the Colts 27-0 sits in the collective memory of a city that has been waiting ever since for the feeling to return. And every year, at some point before the season starts, Cleveland says it again. Maybe this time is different. You can hear two things in that sentence simultaneously. The stubbornness, the refusal to stop caring through 62 years of near misses and wrong turns and organizational mistakes and heartbreaks that would have emptied other stadiums permanently. The specific Cleveland stubbornness that shows up in the stands in November when the wind is coming off Lake Erie and the team is 3-8, and there is no rational argument for optimism. They still show up. And the other thing you can hear, underneath the stubbornness, the genuine, documented, statistically supported reality that things change. That eventually, the right combination of player and system and front office stability and luck produces what the history says should have happened already. That the law of large numbers does not forgive franchises forever. That somewhere in the next few years of Cleveland Browns football there is a season that does not end with a search for the next answer at quarterback. Think about what it takes to keep believing that. You have watched over 40 quarterbacks come and go. You have made the drive to the stadium and watched the hope arrive in September and watched it dissolve by November. You have argued about the roster and the draft and the coaching and the salary cap implications of decisions made years before the current quarterback arrived. You have watched a franchise give away 3 first-round draft picks and $230 million guaranteed dollars for a quarterback who played 17 games, and you still show up. That is not a normal thing. That is something further down the spectrum. Something that lives past the point where most reasonable people stop investing emotionally in outcomes they cannot control. It is the specific stubbornness of a city that was promised its team was worth keeping, and believed it, and kept believing it, long after the evidence suggested a different conclusion was more likely. Maybe this time is different. Cleveland has said it before. Cleveland will say it again. Another quarterback is coming. The city will be ready. It is always ready. That is both the tragedy and the only thing left worth admiring about this specific, particular, absolutely unreasonable kind of love.